Alrighty, so we're going to go over how to bring in our animation from Maya into After Effects. So I've created a brand new project. I'm going to go to my project content folder over to the left, right click, and I want to make a new composition, which is basically what I'm going to put these assets into. So I'm going to hit new composition. And just to match it, I'm keeping it simple. I'm just going to call this one ties final logo. I'm using HD TV 1080 24 frames a second, frame rate 24 frames, because that's actually what I had rendered it out as. So if I go into my render settings, oops, my render settings, crazy me, my animation settings, we could see I'm using 24 frames a second. And I want to match that just so it doesn't get weird on me and my timing doesn't go off. So if I did it initially for 30 frames a second or whatever, I would have switched to that. Right now I'm just doing 24. So same resolution, same frame rate, and I'm setting it to 20-second movie. I like to give it a little bit of padding, a little bit of extra space, because it's a lot easier. I don't have to keep going into the composition settings to change the time frame. If I give myself a little padding, and then I can just cut it down to what I need. I know it's not going to be 20 seconds, but that gives me more than enough time to work with it. And background color is set to black. So now I've got it. Here's the view of my composition. There's the composition, but it's empty. And here's my timeline, just like in Maya, where I could scrub through it if there was something in it. So I want to bring that image sequence in. So I go back to my content in my project, right click, and I'm going to import a file. Even though this is a little deceiving, you might think it's multiple files. I'm actually bringing over an image sequence which will count as one group. So I just say File. I select the first one, and you'll notice, let's see, we'll go in. I'm just going to select you, and you'll notice it automatically selects PNG sequence because it knows, it looked in the folder and said, hey, you have a bunch of frames that actually are showing that. You know, with the frame padding, we had set 0001, 0002, and so forth. So I don't have to select all of them. I just select that first frame. It recognizes it as a sequence, a footage sequence, and it's going to pull in that whole sequence into one container that I can then drop into my composition. So now it's in there, but it's not in my composition. So this is my bucket of things that I put in, different images, sound files, they'll all show up here. This is my timeline and how I organize them and put effects on them and animate them. So I'm just going to take that image sequence. You can see it's frame 0001 to frame 0150. Excuse me. I could drag it into here, but then I have to line it up and everything. I'm just going to drag it right into my composition that I made, and it automatically fits it. So now if I scrub through it, you'll see the animation, but you'll also notice it's pixelated until I stop moving it. So I'm going to do a temporary load this into the RAM. I'm going to hit my space bar. To get a RAM preview, you hit the space bar again. And now that green bar shows what's loaded in RAM. And now if I scrub through it, you could see I could see it in detail. I can also increase or decrease the resolution. When you start having excuse me, issues with how much RAM you're using and how many layers and it starts chugging, you could cut down how it's viewing it to save, to speed up your machine. Right now I'm using full because that's not a lot. And I have a decent amount of RAM in my laptop, so it's fine. So if I want, I could just spit this out as a movie. Now, maybe I want to do some stuff to this. Okay. One, if I hit play, we'll take a look at this. It just immediately stops and disappears, and it would be nice, spacebar, if it actually held that for a little while. So there's a few things I could do. What I like to do is just render out that last frame so I can have a little more control over it. So I'm going to select, go to my last frame. You can see that there's a few frames of it. And I'm going to say, File, and I want to, oops, you know what? That's the wrong one. Composition, save frame as file. And here it's saying, well, how do I want to save it? And the reason I want to do that is because I want to hold that last frame longer in my timeline, not just abruptly stop and disappear. And maybe I want to do something with it afterwards without having to go back into Maya. So I'll just go in. I don't want it as a Photoshop file. I could, but I'm just going to keep it consistent and make it a PNG, choose PNG. See, it's here, and I'm just going to rename it. And I'm going to put this in my image sequence folder of my Maya project. What you'll see is I already had one because I had a crash and I have to redo this. So lastframe.png. And I'm going to hit render. Plays a nice little chime. Now you know it's completed. And now I can import that in. So I'll right click, import file. There it is right there. Last frame. And I'm going to drag that right in. So here's the last frame. Now you'll notice if I go here, it's visible because it's lined up. It starts now in the timeline where my movie starts. I don't want that. I want to pull this back. And sometimes it may be a little hard to see, so I can zoom in right here at the bottom to make sure these guys are overlapped. So it should go boom, and then you notice no change whatsoever. All right, so now I can hold it for as long as I want. And one more thing I could do, so I could have it go there, and then I could have the background change on me. And to do that, I need a solid layer behind it that I can change the color or animate it or put a glow or, or like have a mask that shows it or however I want to do that. So I'm going to go just a few seconds into this. And I'm going to go to Layer, New, Solid. And I'm going to make this one, I'm just going to call this one background. And it's not in the background until I drag it to the background. There we are, like that. But once again, now it's in the background all the time. I could want that, but maybe I'll move this. don't like the pop of it. So now I want to, maybe it comes out and it turns black. So I'm going to scale it. I'm just going to grab it, kind of shrink it down. But you'll notice that my design is not lined up with it. So if I select these, that last image I'd rendered out, shift select my movie, I could use my arrows and line that up. That looks good right about there. And I did both of them because then they're going to be in sync with each other. See? And now what I'm going to do, select my background, shrink it down, move it back a second, and then right here, if I go to the background properties in my layer, these are all things that I can key. So I wanted to key the scale, and I've set a keyframe, and over the course of a second, let's try that. I'm going to expand it out. Bam. So if I go now, let's see what happens. And we just have something like that. And maybe that's my movie. There we are. And then I could have it that my logo either stays or the whole thing fades out, or maybe just the logo fades out. And that would just be that last image, remember? So it's there. So I'd go to my last frame, and on this one, boom, it stays, and then a second in. I'm going to go to my last frame, and I'm just going to just key opacity. Click the little watch, there's the keyframe, there's the keyframe, and then maybe within a half a second, I'm going to fade that out. And that's my movie. So let's see, it starts off black. And then it's ready to go to whatever the background would be. Okay. To finish it off, I'm just going to go to the end, this top bar, say when do I want this to end, and I'm saying like at about 10 seconds, right there is the end of this movie. Now if I zoom it out, I could always go back and say, oh, my workspace, I'm also going to tuck that in to 10 seconds. Zoom out. Cut my movie down to there. And I'm ready to spit this out as a movie. Control M or Command M if you're, I believe it's, I think it's Control M on a Mac as well. And then I just make sure there's my final output, give it a name. Render settings, you want to make sure best quality, full resolution. Use comps frame rate, 24 frames a second. And then the output, this is where you'd say what kind, AVI file, QuickTime. So if I did a QuickTime movie, and then this would be compression. Animation is good. Sorensen, MPEG-4, you can't go wrong with a lot of these. Most of the time, it's just a matter of compression size. If it's uncompressed, the file's going to be huge. We don't want to deal with that. So MPEG-4 video does a really good job of making the file size smaller. Animation also works really well. And audio, if I had audio, I would set it and I would have dragged it in, but I don't have any audio to it. Okay, and then just hit render. And then depending on the complexity, it could take a minute, it could take an hour, but for what we're working on, it shouldn't take that long. Excellent. So that means if we go in, and if I grab that movie, get to that movie file. Just grabbing where my movie file is at. It's in the same folder, I just launched it. That's it.